strength and patience. But if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
Not the typical vague and politically correct speech that diplomats are perhaps known for, but President Trump made it clear he's no diplomat in his first appearance before the UN General Assembly. Dr. Jeff Engel, director of the Center for Presidential History at SMU. So was his audience a bunch of diplomats sitting in that room, a bunch of leaders of other countries, or was it his domestic political audience?
I think it's really the domestic political audience. I want to set
more so than the rest of the world.
Yeah, let me set the stage here for what's going on. At the UN General Assembly, when they have these meetings, every global leader gets 15 minutes. President Trump took 40, although that's not that unusual.
Right.
But what's interesting is that it's a speech that's, of course, translated simultaneously into 50, 60 languages, which means it takes a while for the crowd to react.
Yeah.
So most presidents have said it's like speaking to a wax museum, essentially. So what that tells us is that what Trump was saying was basically not for the crowd. It was for the domestic audience and perhaps the audience in Beijing or Pyongyang.
Why not be blunt when you're talking about the United Nations, which has, in a lot of ways, long been subject to criticism about being ineffective? I mean, it's the Great Compromise Club.
It is the Great Compromise Club, which is how it was designed, and I think we need to remember that we're the ones largely that designed it. This is an American-led creation from after World War II, and the idea is that it's not just a place to get things done, it's a place to build consensus. And so presidents in the past have gone and talked about multilateralism, talked about having a global view of the world, even if they want to act in America's sovereign interest, because when they act in America's sovereign interest, they want the rest of the world to say, well, yes, we agree with what you've done.
But there is good and there is bad in the world, and North Korea is bad, and Iran is bad, and nobody disagrees with that, but nobody seems willing to do anything but talk about it.
Well, and you know, from my perspective, every day that we're talking and not fighting is always a good day. But that being said, it's very interesting that President Trump used the word sovereignty again and again. He actually used that word 21 times in his speech to suggest that America's interests are more important to him than the rest of the world. Now that sounds quite obvious. That's what we want an American president to do. And of course, President Trump suggested that every leader should do that.
Sure.
But then, of course, he did say that he was particularly interested in effectively violating the sovereignty of these rogue regimes, of these evil regimes. So he is both saying that we want to have our national interests matter and that our national interest matters more than we think anyone else's national interest matters.
He also talked about the Iran nuclear deal and made it pretty clear, although within the last week, he extended the Iran nuclear deal, certified that Iran is following it, but now suggests that Iran's probably not following it and the United States may drop out of it. As the president of France pointed out, very calmly, not being critical of President Trump, but said, Iran without the world nuclear deal is North Korea.
I think that's not an unfair statement. And we have to remember that although President Trump keeps referring to this as an Iranian-American deal, or especially with North Korea, as a North Korean-American negotiation, there are other global partners here. So if perhaps President Trump is simply playing the tough cop, if you will, and suggesting that the rest of the world should come and do the negotiations while we stand with the big baton behind them. But the truth of the matter is the Iranian nuclear deal is the only thing that's keeping us to have any sense of what's going on with the Iranian nuclear program.
All right, Dr. Jeff, we could talk about Venezuela, we could talk about so much more. It was an interesting speech to kind of lay out the Trumpian view of the world.
It's the best sense we have of what he really thinks.
Yeah, thanks very much.